afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I start, I received a message this morning which I think is the most powerful way to start the day. It was, "Speak from the heart, brother." And it reminded me of Aristotle. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And as I was thinking about the topic for today and wrestling with the ideas, I felt like the old man in the sea, out on the big ocean trying to catch a single sardine to get all the ideas that I wanted to try and share with you today. But what I've seen today, in terms of defining the word of service, from all the information that you've received and the very brave conversations that have been had today, I think the definition of service has been shown here today. The theme of alone but together, when we're standing on stage and alone or wrestling with the ideas, those ones take time. But when we're together in the room, the love that we have for what we're doing shines through. So thank you to all the speakers today. I think it shows exactly what service is as a definition. What I wanted to try and unpack today in this conversation was my own service journey, taking you back in time and thinking about what it looked like for me. The three questions that I hear most often in the world of education that I live in now are these. How and why do we do service? What are the benefits of service? Most importantly, how do we measure the impact and benefits of service that we do? So, I'm going to invite you to join me on my own service journey. And a note to say that we see the world as we are. We shaped our own lens, and that develops throughout time as we grow and learn ourselves. Being brave and stepping out of our comfort zones and going into acts of service are one of those ways that make this happen. But I'm not standing on stage as a guru. I'm sharing the ideas and thoughts as I've seen them in my journey and want to reflect these back to you to help you think about where you are with your own service journey at this moment. So, in terms of a definition, I think it's a bit subjective to try and compartmentalize service, and I'm not going to claim to know all the answers for it, but if you'd ask my family, they certainly know that I love all the questions that come up about it. So, the doors of service to me open outwards. If you're brave enough to step outside and walk through those doors of service and not expect anything to come back, then a lifetime of unexpected and brilliant opportunities and learning comes your way. So, I'm going to invite you back to 1978, in the autumn, when the amazing sounds of Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta were encouraging us, and Grease was the word. I went to a very small school at the age of 9, and as you can tell, I still have the same haircut that my mum very kindly put together for me back then. And I was in a very small school. Well, actually, it was more like a big house. There were only 30 of us as boarders, and it felt more like a family. There were less than 100 students in the school, and we were lucky enough to be in the care of an extremely kind, wise, and thoughtful head teacher. We lived on campus along with our head teacher and his family, and his son happened to end up being one of my best friends. He ended up being the head of school and the head boy. I ended up being the vice head boy. So we were very close, and within school, we lived on campus, shared our journeys, went to school together, and reflected a lot of things back to each other. And what I learned from those first few years was this. In terms of service, what we thought were just the daily chores, getting up, cleaning the school, doing the dishes, helping make the food, tidy up afterwards, put all the things in together. We always had music and other things going on in the background that helped us form that community. It wouldn't have happened without the head teacher. And I'm going to go back to that one. Sorry. go back in the flames, there. What happened at the beginning was we were told that we would be doing our dishes and we'd be making food and all the rest of it, and I felt like I was at home. So these were my chores and duties. They may not have felt like they were acting as service, and they felt more transactional. They were just something that we had to do. But over the period of time, our head teacher, by role modeling and being part of that journey with us and reflecting back to us thank yous, noticing what we were doing, being around us when we were playing sports and checking in with us, those touchstones and items of care that he did really helped exemplify and show us what service and care meant. Most importantly, as you can tell, I was a little kid away from home. His touchstones and check-ins with me meant an awful lot, and he was always aware of what my family was up to and would check in and ask after their welfare as well. I think for me, it's time to consider Mark Twain's observation: the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you will find out why. I don't agree with that. It sounds to me that that's more of a light bulb moment and a eureka moment when you find out why. For me, it's more of a gradual lightening of the light. So almost like a dimmer switch being turned on. So for me, it was that time. This is why I had a script. Sorry, my apologies. It was my first time that I experienced a true culture of care, and it is one that has left an indelible mark on me. And anybody who knows me knows that I will sometimes stray from the path at my own peril and go down a few things. So there's the ocean that I was talking about. In terms of going back to the journey, my first experience at primary school set me up well for what was going to happen next. In 1982, I went to my next school, which is a much bigger and more interesting space to be. And as I arrived there, I realized that the service that we'd learned from our head teacher at school had set us up for what was to happen next. So in my next school, I am going to read from the script. My apologies. So my new school was bigger in all ways, and service formed a compulsory part of the curriculum. Being a newbie, I had no idea which service club to join. We were lucky. We had mountain rescue, fire service, air cadets, so much choice. And whilst we were fortunate to have that, I really wasn't sure about which one I wanted to do. So I decided to join the community service. It sounded like a natural progression from what I had learned and seen doing at my primary school. We were told that we had a service assignment for a whole afternoon, once a week, for a whole semester. It could be anything from visiting a care home for the elderly to going to a local hospital to spend time with patients. When I found out that I would spend my first semester going to visit a young man with spina bifida, whose name was Ben, not his real name, I wasn't sure what to expect on my first visit. I really remember the minibus journey that took us and a small group of students on our weekly visits. It was miles away from where our school was, and I was the first person to be dropped off and the last one to be picked up. Ben lived on a farm with his parents in the middle of nowhere. I remember the bus dropping me off when his mum came to the door and waved. As I approached the front door, an unexpected and overwhelming smell hit the air. As I introduced myself to Ben's mum and she showed me into the kitchen, as a young person, I wasn't prepared for what I'd see next. Ben was in a wheelchair and was very contorted and struggled. And that first afternoon was a chance for me to understand just what empathy meant. I couldn't understand, I'd never come across this situation before, and I wasn't prepared, but I soon found that despite the pain, the light in his eyes, his sense of humour, his desire to play a game of cards and spend the afternoon finding out about me as I found out about him, changed how we felt. The afternoon went by really quick, and a toot of the horn in the minibus a few hours later told me it was time to leave. I remember driving away from the farm feeling excited about going back the next week. That semester flew by. Each week we would play cards, read books, and do those things that we started in the first week. But what I didn't realise and understand at the time was the reaction that some people around me would have when I got back on the bus. As I stepped back on the bus that first day, the smell that had hit me as I hit the door came back in with me into the bus. And after some fairly unkind words winding down the windows, I was invited to go and sit at the back of the bus. Thankfully, as the semester went around, people became more interested in who I was seeing as they got to know me and they got to know him, and less about the smell. Now, Ben had always wanted a girlfriend, and he kept ribbing me and asking me and teasing me about my situation with my own. And towards the end of that semester, I vividly remember asking two girls who'd now become good friends of mine to come in with me and spend time with Ben. They were super kind and really enjoyed his company, so much so that they ended up having their photos and pictures taken with him, something I never heard the end of from Ben. It made his semester. At the end of the semester, I went on winter break, and when I came back, I had a card from the mum. I thought it was a Christmas card, and what happened next was an unexpected learning moment for me. The card told me that Ben had died over the winter holiday, and in the card she'd been thanking me for coming to see him and told me that it had made a huge difference to him. This was somewhere between an aha moment and a light bulb moment for me. I certainly gained a deeper understanding of what empathy meant at that moment. The rest of my time at school, and on reflection, the rest of my life, was shaped by that first semester of community service. All of this was through stepping out through the doors of a service that I really wasn't sure about what to do. So, a very long time ago, I made the choice to step back into the world of education to work. So I'm going to bring this up to the present day. From my perspective, I'm extremely grateful to have had the opportunity to work with students as they find their own reasons for getting involved in service and reflecting on their own aha moments. 3 words that often come to mind when I'm listening to someone in these brightening moments are courage, growth, and authenticity. Whether it's someone taking on a new role or increasing their level of responsibility, it generally takes courage to step into that new space. What may start from a place of transaction, perhaps they're looking for fulfilling a graduation requirement or believing that having a certain title will help their resume or CV. What tends to happen from stepping into that space with courage is growth and a sense of authentic purpose as they've taken the opportunity to grow as a human being. So, it's been said that leadership is an inside job and it represents the ongoing work of a lifetime. Becoming a better leader of ourselves helps us become a more effective contributor within our community. Service provides us with countless opportunities to develop an array of skills that empower us to support or lead others. Finding that golden mean between service for others and self-care is one of the parts of journey I hear about most frequently. I've worked with so many students who find themselves overstretched, overwhelmed, and needing to learn a diplomatic way to say one of the shortest sentences in the world: no. Thought and action is often mirrored in the space between listening and speaking. The 2 ears and 1 mouth analogy indicates to us that we may be wiser to listen more than we speak before we act. It's in that space of discussion that we make progress. So whilst we make progress, and it's not linear, we often find ourselves making mistakes or disagreeing with the others as we speak. I've heard this a lot with students who are setting up clubs and everybody has their own ideas that they're bringing to the table. If we're to be understood and accepted as being part of the process, we need to understand that finding consensus takes time. And as a perfect example for today, in those spaces, you may often fail and need to stand up, and remembering that fail stands for the first attempt in learning. Through the many moments I've been lucky enough to share with the students and people I've worked alongside in life, I've tried to distill the journey from window dressing, mere words, to foundation building, authentic works. And I came up with the magic formula. Well, it's more like an acronym. It's certainly not the likes of Einstein's E=mc², but the abbreviations work. I've been very fortunate to have worked alongside so many people who have found this journey themselves, that they may start from a transactional place of extrinsic motivation, pushing themselves into a club that they may not have chosen themselves, as I did. But what happens through that process is that extrinsic motivation to do that turns into an intrinsic motivation as we own it. So the EMI=EMO, IMI=IMO really does work. The most authentic voices I hear are the ones who find true meaning in what they're doing. These are the stories that will always inspire us. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I left my primary school in 1982. Some 34 years later, we took the opportunity to step out of our comfort zone and go and travel and go overseas. But before we did, I made a trip up to Scotland to see my old friend and his father, my old head teacher. We spent the afternoon talking about our lives, our journeys, his journey through education and where that had got to. And in French, it's on a boucle la boucle. Some 34 years later, I got to sit on the bench and explain to him that the way I treat students and the way that I treat other people was a direct reflection of the care and the way that he treated us. It was an incredibly powerful moment to reflect the light back onto his service that he'd provided to us. So as I wrap up today's speech, I'm going to dim the light on this talk, but I'm going to give you the opportunity in a moment. I have a card and a pencil, and I would like you to think about somebody or someones who have been that person for you and inspired you, and through their service have helped shape your life. Once you've done that, you can take the pencils with you or the cards with you. It's up to you. It's not a compulsory, but I think it's a really important way of showing that despite the fact that we step out through the doors of service and expect nothing back, sometimes shining that light back is a revelation to the person. Certainly for my head teacher, he had no idea that he made that much of an impact on me. So thank you for this afternoon. My apologies for going off script. I thought I should have stuck with that in the first place, and thank you for listening.